There comes a time in every person's life when you realise it's not about doing what you are told, but doing what you know is right for you. Let us take a journey of learning and discovery with the world's most successful people who are living the life of their dreams, walking through life using their inner wisdom and being of service to others. Forget exams, grades and test scores. What is your purpose? As we let go of what we think should be and learn from our elders to gain knowledge, inspiration and a true sense of who we are. What are your dreams? Does your life have meaning? Are you living a life of significance? Let's talk with today's guest. Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome as we spend some more time together on the Learning on Fire podcast. Today I'm talking to Jodi Flynn. Hi Jodi, thanks for joining me and let's explore the journey of who you are.
Oh, Mark, thank you for having me on. I'm so honored and I'm so thankful for those of you who are listening in. I can't wait to talk.
Can you give us a bit of an idea of, I guess, where you are in the world, first of all, and sort of what your life looks like at the moment?
I'm based in southern Maine, so I am in the U.S. in the Northeast, and my business is women taking the lead. And that's what I'm doing in the world. I do executive leadership coaching for overachievers who are at risk for burnout, and I also do organizational workshops for people leaders. And I am also the vice president of the board for the Maine Women's Conference. So I'm all about helping women and women leaders and people leaders to enjoy what they're doing and be at their best all the time.
And I think there's some great mirrors in there in terms, especially if any of you listening are still at school, that whole sense that I need to be spending 20 hours a day studying for my exams and that whole idea of actually looking after yourself and working smart and understanding how life sort of pieces together as a tapestry and that kind of thing. And I guess that there's going to be a lot of similarities there for the sorts of things that you talk about on your podcast and the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why I focus on these types of people because I was one of these people and have also absolutely realized the importance of, making time for other things in life and enjoying what you're doing as you're doing it. So yeah, I can't wait to dive in.
Fantastic. So what does your life look like now and how is it different from when you were growing up?
Well, I'll say, from a 10,000 foot version of things, I was incredibly shy growing up. I was filled with self-doubt and thus lacked confidence to really go after what I wanted. I would have described myself as held back and hesitant. At home, I was fine. I felt completely comfortable to be myself and do what I wanted. But when I was out in the world, out of that protective shelter, I was very unsure of myself and thus very awkward. And that has completely changed. Completely. Although I'm not always successful in all of my endeavors, I'm not afraid to strive for what I want or to experience a failure. I'm not afraid to speak up and be myself. In fact, my focus for this year, I declared, I was like, I'm going to be me and have fun with everything I'm doing. I'm declaring it. And that's a complete 180 from who I was as a child growing up. I would never have declared that.
And I think it's a really interesting thing for people to hear and also to understand is that it's very hard to see your life different, isn't it? And even if you're sort of projecting it into the future, but that kind of like say if you're shy or you're surrounded in an environment that you think, well, I could never be anything different to this, or I couldn't live in a different place, or I couldn't react to people in a different way or interact with people in a different way. And I think hearing people who've made those changes or through their experiences, actually their life looks completely different. I think hopefully that's empowering for people listening.
Yeah, and it all stems to, Mark, at the core about what we believe about ourselves. Like I thought that that's who I was. Like I thought that that was my personality. It was not who I am. It was my reaction to stress that caused me to be shy. And it's taken years, not that it has to take other people years. It's just for me, there was no curriculum for going from being shy and stressed out to calm and confident, right? But I have discovered through my journey what's at the heart of it. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing with some of these overachievers that are at risk for burnout, part of the reason why they're overachievers is because they are filled with self-doubt. They feel like they have to constantly prove themselves, and they're driven to do that, and they do it in disregard to their own health, wellness, rest, fun, and enjoyment. Like they're constantly striving to achieve goals to prove that they're worthy and they're capable. When at the core of it, if they realized who they really are and what they bring to the table, they wouldn't feel like they had to do so much because they already provide tons of value. But yeah, it was, I mean, it's not to say I've lived an entire lifetime, but it has taken, me many years to realize that shyness was not who I was. It was something that I was experiencing.
And I think also it's an interesting position to think about is the fact that, as you said, we're all on a journey, we're all learning as we're going through it, and we shouldn't sort of really take any shortcuts necessarily, because all those experiences make us who we are, and we're learning lessons as we go through. But hopefully, as we talk on this podcast and people start to listen as well, if you start thinking about things in a different way at whatever age that you hear them, and hopefully all it does is it just changes the idea of, if I think like this, then this might give me a different experience or a different reaction or a different understanding. And I think there's no time like now to actually start doing that. Like you say, it doesn't necessarily take a lifetime of experiences to change how you are. It's just it can just be a thought, or certainly just something that just a little light bulb that goes off and you just think, yeah, there's something here that I can explore, and then you can sort of go away and just see where that leads you.
Yes, it's a combination of both. It's not disregarding your own journey and your own experience, right? Because you and I were chatting a little bit before we started recording about how sometimes you have to experience something over and over and over again to finally learn the lesson of it. It's those experiences where you say to yourself, I knew this. I knew I knew I needed to take a break, or I knew I didn't need to push so hard, that if I just calmed down, everything would come together. But it's not regretting those experiences, right? It's embracing the experience. Like, okay, this is what I needed to learn the lesson. And at the same time, knowing that, human beings have experienced this before, and there's probably like books you can read or things that you can discover. I mean, Google is an amazing tool that we have. You can find resources that can help you to develop in whatever area you're looking to develop. But at the same time, I'm going to reiterate, don't disregard your own journey. And some experiences that we have, we can call them mistakes or failures. They're all opportunities for us to learn more about ourselves.
Yeah, and I love that phrase, embracing what you're doing, no matter what it is. Sometimes life is easy, sometimes life can be tricky, sometimes it can be stressful. But I think, like I say, when you've got that sort of bird's eye view of being able to embrace it all for what it is and have that little bit of understanding that it's all part of the makeup of who you are and what you're doing, then I think it gives you a sort of an inner guidance of just kind of, yeah, I get this, even if it's hard, even if it's tricky, it's giving me something, and actually then that's a gift, no matter, like I say, whether it's positive or whether you would perceive it to be negative. It can always be an opportunity, which I absolutely love.
Mm-hmm.
What was valuable about your school experience?
Well, I would say what first comes to mind when I think about that question is how important mentors are in our life. I just talked about having your own experience, and you can read books and find resources. Well, you can actually find people that will make a huge difference in your life. And, and I talked earlier about how shy I was and how hesitant and how full of self-doubt. Well, I got over my self-doubt and my lack of confidence in part because I had teachers who believed in me. And they didn't just say that they believed in me, like it wasn't just words, coming at me. They actually demonstrated that they believed in me. I started to see myself through their eyes and not just through my own self-critical lens. And I took on their beliefs as my own, right? It's a leap of faith when somebody tells you something about yourself in a positive light, like you can do this and you're capable, you're strong, like whatever those words are that they're sharing with you, initially we feel this disconnect because it's not how we're seeing ourselves currently, but we want to believe it. And maybe there's a spark that we're like, you can almost see what they see, but it's a leap of faith to take on, like, okay, if they see it in me, it must be true, right? And once my beliefs about myself changed and I saw myself as capable and intelligent and resourceful, my hesitancy to speak up or say yes to a new opportunity started to go away. Now, this is an ongoing process because, I need to continue to challenge what I believe about myself and others and the world in general. But this whole process started within the school environment.
And the mentoring things come up quite a lot over the course of my interviews with people, and it really is. It's almost like a window into another world sometimes, and it might be a window into your world, like you said, in terms of seeing who you are through someone else's eyes, or it might be a window into an experience or a situation or a way of living which you've had no personal experience of before. But I think that human interaction is incredibly valuable and very powerful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are the people we're spending a majority of our day with. Like Monday through Friday, during the school year, this is the adult in our life, especially in primary school, where for the most part you're spending most of your day with one teacher. And if that teacher to you is somebody that you look up to and you admire and you respect, and in some cases from a child's eyes, like that you adore, what an amazing experience it can be. And on the flip side, I've also had, experiences, let's just talk about it because it's true. Teachers who may have had my best interests at heart, but I didn't feel it, right? And I didn't sense it, and there wasn't the same relationship there. That was a struggle for me and had me only appreciate all the more the teachers whom I did connect with, and did get excited about. And I've listened to some of your episodes and some of the stats that they talked about, where even if a child is not interested in the subject matter, if they respect the teacher and connect with the teacher, they will still do well in that subject because of that relationship.
Yeah, that really is true, and I think also, like you said, it's harder when you're younger because you might have one teacher for an entire year, which is it's only after you've done a few years that you start to understand that everyone's different and you connect to people in a different way.
Yes.
And like you say, it's really interesting. When I've had my fair share of teachers where I just thought, oh yeah, this is just amazing, and I can do anything I like, and teachers where you just think, I'm not sure they've got my back, even if they think they have, because I don't. It all just seems a little bit difficult, or they don't seem to like you, or they
Yeah.
are doing something but you're not quite sure, and that's hard as well. But I guess it's like, once you've left school and when you're dealing with people around the world, it's not everyone that you get on with or not everyone that you connect with, and understanding that you can sort of find your way in whichever way that comes, and that's an important thing to learn as well, like you say, which comes from just being in the school environment, not necessarily by what you're being taught.
Yeah, it's the first context in which you're learning how to get along with people, right? And maybe to continue to strive and endeavor in circumstances that are harder than others. Because when you get into the work environment, you may have a boss that you have a hard time connecting with. And can you still do a good job? Even if the relationship is there, or can you figure out ways to enhance the relationship and get better? I mean, sometimes the experience of a teacher you don't initially connect with, well, causes you to be like, well, how can I improve this situation? What do they like? What do I need to do to get on their good side? And you learn without even like really overthinking it. You really learn different strategies for how to get along with different personality types.
I think that's really true, and we've talked about teachers there. There are teachers that you remember, and why do you remember them specifically?
Mm. Well, I have to say, I have this freakish thing where I remember all my teachers, their names. I guess I was just one of those students that, like, I will be forthcoming and say I was one of those people that I always wanted to be liked by my teachers, even though I may not have always had the experience that I was like, I always wanted to be liked. I wanted the gold star. I wanted to be teacher's pet and all of that. So I do remember my teachers, but the ones that stand out are there are two first and foremost are my fourth grade teacher, because she was very organized, right? Which created this like calm and structured environment. And she was very kind. And I had her right after the third grade teacher, who is the one I think about that I had the hardest time getting along with. For some reason, I just felt like, and I know she had my best interests at heart. Like looking back on things as an adult, I know she wanted me to be successful. I know she wanted me to do well. It's just her strategies for bringing that out in me actually created a lot of stress and angst in my life. So to go from a teacher who was very critical, and did the public shaming thing, to a teacher who was very kind, and had this softer approach, that was very impactful for me, because I was so appreciative that I wanted to show her how appreciative I was of that. And I did that by becoming a better student, right? To show her how much I appreciated her. And then there was a history teacher that I had in my sophomore and junior year in high school. I remember her because I would say she was the one who, and I'll put this in air quotes, discovered me, right? She had the biggest impact on my life. She made me excited about learning, and she didn't buy into how I was presenting myself. And how I was presenting myself at that time in my life was as a middling student. Like I was just average. I wasn't that great. I'd had different experiences in school that caused me to believe I was just an average student of average intelligence. And she was the one who got me to really believe in myself initially and come out of my shell.
And I love the fact that it's the kindness of teachers, it's the human connection, it's them wanting to be part of your life. It's not just about, now I'm going to tell you how to learn, or we're going to cover this curriculum and that kind of thing. And I think we're all humans, and we're all, like we said, we're all connecting in different ways, and it's some of those basic things which I don't know whether you're taught those in teacher college or anything like that, but it's just personality sometimes, and like I say, when it connects with you that strongly, it means that you think, yeah, that's the way I want to be. I want to pass that forward. I want to be kind to other people because I know how that makes me feel.
Yeah, and Mark, I don't think this is just coming to me, but like it's also ringing true in my head. I don't think you can have learning without the relationship, right? And in some way, even if it's not a warm and fuzzy relationship, there has to be a respect and an appreciation for what the teacher or whoever's playing the teacher role, for what they're providing. And we know this as adults too. We know that people aren't going to listen to us if they don't respect us, right? If they don't appreciate us as a person, if the relationship isn't there. In the work environment, you definitely cannot impact somebody if there isn't a relationship there, which allows for it. So, I know as a facilitator, because I do workshops, and I obviously work privately with clients, the first thing I have to do is build the relationship, earn their trust. And we do this initially. We do this on podcasts where we introduce somebody and talk about all the things they're doing in the world to position them as an expert or somebody you would want to listen to. So right from the get-go, right from the introduction, you were helping me to build a relationship with your audience so that when I share something, they can hear it and take it in and consider it. If that relationship wasn't there, if you didn't introduce me, or somebody's not impressed with my resume, they're going to listen from a standpoint of, I don't see why I need to listen to this person, right? So for teachers, so important to recognize whether whatever the quality of it is, the relationship is important.
And I think also sometimes it's actually being a human, isn't it, as well? I was thinking, it's partly to teachers, but there's a radio presenter here in the UK, and he's very popular, and And you sort of wonder what is it about him that does it. And I think it's partly the fact that you can connect with him and his life. It's not, he's fantastic at the way he delivers it. The skills and the understanding of his job are first class. But it's something about that, like you say, you know them, you kind of love them, you get drawn into what they're trying to do. The sharing of life and all that kind of thing becomes a regular thing because it's like a daily show. So you get to hear it all the time. And like I say, it's that relationship which becomes personal, even though it's a radio presenter or even as a podcaster, it's one to many, but actually you can still have that personal contact. And even a teacher, and even if it's like one teacher to 30 or 40 children, however it might be, you can still have that one-to-one connection, like you say, in that respect and that ongoing learning, which is key, like exactly as you just said.
Yeah, bringing in the human element. And, you don't have to go into every mistake you've ever made. That's not the totality of your humanity. But like you said earlier, being kind, sharing a little bit, and also seeing other people. Like, and really, with the history teacher I was talking about, I felt like she really saw me. She saw past the facade to who I really was. That's very impactful. Now, with a radio show or a podcast, I know that person can't necessarily see me because they don't really know me. But in the sharing of their life and the sharing of their own experiences, they validate mine to some extent. So I feel my experience are validated. And there's many podcast hosts where I feel like I'm friends with them, even if they don't know I exist.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Who did you admire when you were young, and what was it about that person that had such an impact?
Yeah, I'm going to double down on this history teacher because this was a huge one for me. Although, of course, I admired my parents and family members, and there were other people out in the world who were doing great things, and I was totally like, wow, look at what they're doing because of the impact this person had on my life. It's this history teacher, and I admired her not only for all the reasons I stated. She was also very knowledgeable and had a lot of common sense. She was funny, but she knew when to get down to business. She was aware of the vibe in the room and in tune with individual students and what they needed from her. She was responsive and non-judgmental. There was just, because of all these things, it just created this light about her, a lightness about her that drew people to her, right? She was that balance of competence and being kind, right? Like being able to handle the whole room, but also sensitive to the individual. And I would say in a lot of ways as I see myself as an archetypical teacher and healer type person. And I can see in retrospect how my experience watching her and seeing how she did things shaped how I approach my work today, where I try to do the same thing in workshops or working privately with clients. I would say the most crucial thing I do with my clients is help them to believe in themselves and see themselves for who they really are, and not just what they do for others or the facade that they build up about themselves or their strategy for coping with stress. Is to help them really see themselves and really believe in themselves. And it's so funny because that's what this teacher did for me, and why I hold so much love for her even today, even though I haven't seen her in like 26 years. She's still very present in my life today.
And I'm interested, you sort of said about your one-on-one coaching and things. I mean, I know from teaching drums and percussion, it's like sometimes you turn up and you have a conversation and you think, oh, this lesson's going to go in this way, or this workshop's going to go in this way because this is what we've done in the last however many workshops. And then they show up in your life that day and you're just like, no, that's just really it's not the right day. Something's happened, or they're somewhere emotionally, which means that it just needs to be different. And I guess that's the sort of thing you're talking about, is it? It's that kind of, you sort of read the experience, you read the room, you have a feeling that actually it's not, well, it never is about you. It's about how you can help the person that you're working with.
Yes, absolutely. And Mark, that can happen in a group too, because if you were leading a band, right, and they were coming for band practice, you would also know that, okay, I had this plan but this is how they're all showing up today. So how do I meet the needs? Because if you try to stick to the plan, it's not going to go well. But if you can meet people where they are, right, you can create something unexpected and perhaps produce more than you thought you would.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And what just struck me there as well is that you can do that personally as well, because you can have a plan. Oh, today I'm going to be doing X, and I've got my to-do list, and I've got this, and this is how I'm going to be. And then you wake up in the morning and you think, I'm really not there today. I can meditate, I can go for a walk, I can do whatever, but it's just one of those days. And actually being sensitive to who you are
Yeah.
within yourself, and actually having a little bit of leeway, and just, you know what, I'm going to throw that out the window, and I'm just going to start again, and I'm going to rethink what I think my day wants to be based on how I am as well.
Right. It definitely this I have this experience as a coach, and I can imagine teachers also experience this as well, where there's a lot of self-management that goes on. And sometimes you can manage yourself right back on track. And sometimes management needs to be, okay, this is what I have to give today. Right. And I'm going to make this work, but it might not look the way it normally does. There are some days where, and actually sometimes that works for what we need to do. If I find there are some days where, gosh, there's a lot going on, and I can be distracted, it really helps me hone my skills of managing my attention and my listening skills. And I may have had a plan that day where it was going to require more engagement on my part, but I might take a step back and do something different, because in coaching and in teaching and learning, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's not just what's going on for the student, it's what's going on for the teacher too. And even I find often the books I'm reading, the podcasts I'm listening to, a movie that I've seen recently, an article that I've read might impact and play into what comes up in the session, and how I like the conversation we have, and what I offer as a perspective. So, it's going back, Mark. Here's a trend. It's going back to, it's the relationship
Yeah.
that creates the experience.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and there's something else which just struck me there as well, which I had recently. I think it's more of it's a performer type thing, but you turn up over the course of a week, and you have the adrenaline of it being something new, a new show. You don't know it as well as you might like to, because you've only had a certain amount of rehearsal, and you're like geared up to the nines about how it's going to go, and your skills and training and understanding mean that it usually goes brilliantly, and all that kind of thing. But then you have a sort of a second show where you think, well, you've got the experience of having done it, so you think that's fine, and then the next day you've kind of done it twice, so therefore, oh, it's okay, I can sort of take my foot off the gas a little bit, not be quite so on edge. And then then you do another couple of days, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm sort of not really concentrating enough now, and you sort of end up having that sort of quick, no, I need to go and just really make sure I'm still focusing. And then a few shows go by, and you're almost thinking about what you're having for dinner halfway through what you're doing, and it just makes me laugh to myself sometimes. It's like, it's exactly the same thing, but my experience on every single one of those things is slightly different. And I remember working with a conductor a few years ago now, and he said, you have to remember, especially if you're doing the same sort of things over and over and over, it's a percentage game. It's that kind of, each one will be different, each experience will be different, but your job is to provide a high percentage of quality in what you're doing, because there are some things that you can't cope with, some things which you can't control, and anything can happen in live performance, certainly. But actually, it's having that understanding overall that keeps that high percentage up, which gives you the quality that you want to experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you talk about that, how, in the beginning, it's almost like your experience of being amped up, right? Really creates a great show for you. And you have this feeling of like, oh my God, we killed it. I was so nervous about it. But the expectations were kind of low, so you over delivered. And how the experience of things changes over time. And you notice like, oh, this is becoming old hat. I have to recreate this experience. I have to make it interesting, or I have to recommit, to providing a good performance. And it just shows that we go through stages too with some of these things as well. And eventually you probably get to the point where you're like, okay, now we're ready to start with a new group or teach somebody else how to do, or start with a new show. Like we've gotten past the lifetime of this experience, and it needs to be created anew. But as long as you're showing up, wherever you are in the stages, then you're gonna respond to what's needed in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I'm sure people can relate that to the experience of different teachers. Like I say, that when you're younger and you've got one teacher all year, you have that, the adrenaline of a new teacher and how's it going to be, and then by the time you've gone through a whole year, it's like you could almost be best friends in whichever way that we've been talking about before, and then how you want that to be and how that relationship develops. And as we said, again, it's relationships, it's how it makes you feel and how you deal with that and how you understand it, which is absolutely key.
Yeah, and it's making me think about how I have such an appreciation for teachers and what they go through. And also, it makes me think about also based on the time of the year, like what you need to do. Because I know as a workshop facilitator, it's much easier to deliver a workshop in the morning. After lunch, we have to do more interactive type of things. It needs to be more physical and engaging. You can't just give a lot of information to somebody. And then, for kids, like if it's right before the holidays, right before the summer, like as a teacher, like right when you kind of want to take your foot off the gas, you're like, nope, I've got to like amp up and bring my best. I need to keep their attention. Otherwise I'm going to lose them. Right. So again, that symbiotic relationship of what's your experience with this? You may have delivered this information time and time again, but if you go on autopilot, you're going to lose your audience. So you have to like make it fresh, recreate it, make it interesting for yourself, because you need to make it interesting for the audience. And as a musical performer, it's very clear that the people who pay for the seats, they're your audience. But as a teacher, the child or the person who is there to be your student, they're your audience. You're going to provide.
Yeah, and I think about that quite a lot. Actually, it's that kind of they're your audience today, and like I say, if you've done it once or you've done it a million times, it's often their first experience of that in whichever way. And if you can keep that at the forefront of your mind, I think that gives you a pretty good guidance of how you're going to do.
Absolutely.
What was the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and who gave it to you?
The best piece of advice was anonymous. I actually saw it. I think I saw it the first time as a meme on the social webs, and it was unattributed, but it was very impactful. It was, be compassionate toward everyone you meet. Everyone is going through something and you have no idea what it is. And I try to keep this top of mind because it's easy to be out in the world interacting with people, right? We're in grocery stores, we're at work, or, and people are doing what they do and they don't always show up as helpful or awesome, right? They're just showing up how they are. And it's easy to judge somebody about what they should and shouldn't be doing, what they should and shouldn't be saying. But I try to remind myself that I don't know what's going on in somebody's private life. And they could really be going through something big, and that's what's causing them to, not be very self-aware, right? Or mindful of other people. And that, if I can bring compassion, it also is going to help my own stress level, right? Because otherwise I'm just going to get stressed out, and there could be a good reason, why they're showing up the way they do. So again, it's be compassionate towards everyone you meet, because everyone's going through something and you have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I really love that. And it really is a case of it's taking ownership of how you want to show up, isn't it? Like I say, rather than just being an initial reaction to how someone might be. And like I say, you really have no idea what's going on. That's I think it's a really important thing for everyone to remember. Mm. So what advice would you give your younger self if you had to sit Jodi Flynn down and say, this is what I think you should remember if you could go back in time? What would that piece of advice be?
It's so funny, Mark. I'm going to give you a quick answer, but this actually for me, because I'm also a podcaster, like had me in another Word doc, creating a whole list of things, advice I would give my younger self. And I think I'm going to turn that into a podcast episode for women taking the lead. But for this episode, I would say the advice I would give my younger self is it's two things. Let go of the beliefs you have about yourself that don't serve you. Embrace the beliefs that strengthen you and motivate you to go after what you want. And this next piece it's going to come out of left field in the course of this conversation, but it's very relevant to the question you asked. I would also tell my younger self, nurture your relationship with God, because it is the relationship you have with yourself. And what's funny about this question too, Mark, is this is the same advice I would give myself today, my 44-year-old self.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing. As we get older in our years, we don't necessarily getting older within who we truly are, and I think that's something to remember, isn't it? As we sort of develop through our journey, whatever that age happens to be.
Yeah, if it's good advice, it's good advice, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, for sure. What does your future look like?
I'd say my future is an adventure of twists and turns that unfolds each day, is like the quick and easy answer. But what I know exists in my future is a mission of waking up as many people as possible to how powerful and awesome they are. And I'm going to do this through podcasts, books, videos, public speaking, or any medium that calls to me. And I know at the age of 44, I've barely scratched the surface of who I am and what I bring to the world. And I know this is true about others too. So I would say my future is pretty exciting.
You beat me to the punchline there. Really, I was going to say it is exactly that. It sounds exciting, and it's when you feel like there's so much you can do, and so much opportunity, and so much value you can bring, and support that you can do, then it has to be bright, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, because I think if you're just open to whatever comes and knowing that it is going to be beneficial, whatever it looks like, then there's really nothing to worry about or be afraid of or like put up the defensive walls against. It's just like, okay. And sometimes I wake up with that attitude, like, okay, let's see what today brings. Even if I ended the day yesterday like utterly exhausted, I left it on the field and, crawled across the finish line. It's like, okay, it's a new day. Let's do this.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. So, we've talked already about how sort of various resources and books and things have made an impact in terms of how you might interpret them in your workshops and that kind of thing. But is there a podcast or a book or a film or a video, a song or anything which has had a really big impact on your life, and why was that?
I've got a list, but I'll make it quick. Let me just say that as a recovering, perfectionistic, overachieving people pleaser, these all had a big impact on me. So for books, it was Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff by Richard Carlson. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. A New Earth and the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The Gifts of Imperfection and Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And Loving What Is by Byron Katie. For films, you'll like this one, Stand and Deliver, which was an amazing movie about believing in yourself and, and obviously in the school environment. And then there was also Miracle and Anne of Green Gables, which I know seems a little Pollyannish, but she was also somebody who really worked hard, was a kind person, and strived. She loved to learn. And I loved that about her. And then more recently, because podcasts are a relatively new invention, I'm currently getting a lot out of the Robcast with Rob Bell, The Lively Show with Jess Lively. And, those two podcasts explore, the Robcast explores spirituality in the context of sometimes Christianity, Judaism, but he also touches on other practices. And The Lively Show again deals with the non-physical, but more along the lines of your inner voice, law of attraction, spiral dynamics, that type of thing. And then I just have to say, I get a lot out of binge mode. So binge mode Game of Thrones and binge mode's Harry Potter, because they just bring utter joy to me. It's not necessarily about that experience is not about having to achieve something or check a box or, overcome anything. It's just utter and pure enjoyment. And that's important.
Absolutely. And there's a lifetime of things to explore there, which I absolutely love, because that's what we're doing through our life, isn't it? Is just exploring all these things. And don't worry if you didn't catch all those things when you first listened to this. It's going to be on the show notes. If you go to educationonfire.com and in the search bar just put in Jodi Flynn, her show page will pop up, and I'll have links to all of these things, so you can easily just check them out and explore them directly from there. So thank you so much, Jodi. For those people who've are so inspired and want to find out more about you and check out your podcast and everything that you're doing, where's the best place for them to connect and find out?
Yeah, my hub is womentakingthelead.com. That's my website. So you can find my podcast, my book, and also all the buttons for the social media platforms of your choice.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jodi, for sharing your wisdom and allowing us to learn from your fantastic experiences.
Mark, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to those of you who are listening, and I hope you got tons of value from this.
Thanks for listening to the Learning on Fire podcast. For more information, please visit educationonfire.com and follow the links from the homepage. This show is sponsored by the National Association for Primary Education. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.